I learned the hard way, Vince, I'm sure you did as well. Somebody told me, do this because it worked for us. And then you implement it for your site and it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that the tactic isn't valuable. That just means that there are other considerations that didn't work for your situation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BuzzStream podcast. My name is Vince Nero. I'm the Director of Content Marketing here at BuzzStream. Today, our special guest is Nick LeRoy. Nick is the founder of SEOjobs.com job board, the SEO for Lunch newsletter, and he's also got his own consulting firm where he's worked with sites like Dr. Pepper, Apartments.com, Wix, and many, many more. Nick, welcome. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vince. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. Nick, I think I first met you via your email newsletter. So this is like a weekly newsletter that Nick sends out called SEO for Lunch. I'll definitely put the link in the show notes. It's awesome. I really like, Nick, you kind of do a quick recap of what's going on. You give your take in the SEO industry, share some great articles. And I think you and I got connected because you had just launched SEOjobs.com. Nick, you've been an amazing kind of resource and just super friendly, outgoing with I think we talked about freelancing when I was determining whether or not I should go into freelancing as for myself. So I really appreciate that. And Nick, I guess I wanted to start with just like SEOjobs.com. What was the impetus to launching that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, believe it or not, people that may not know this, but I'm not actually the original owner of SEOjobs.com. So the original partner, he reached out to me to sponsor the SEO Jobs newsletter and was like, "Hey, I'm starting this SEO Jobs website. I'm really looking forward to, get some legs. Can I basically post a handful of jobs on your newsletter per week?" And I was like, "Hey, this seems really cool." We ran an ad. He liked what he saw, but didn't necessarily want to pay for the newsletter spot every week. So we jumped on a call and he was just like, "Hey, like you're an SEO. I love SEO, but I'm not really an SEO by trade. And I think this site would do really well if we had a name kind of attached to it." So he's like, "What do you think about becoming partners?" And long story short, I was like, "Heck yeah, like let's jump into this." And the only reason that I am the sole owner of it today is, we get along super well, but he had an opportunity to buy one of his old passion projects back after he sold it. So at that time, I had bought the site. But answering your original question, why SEOjobs.com? It's really because I'm very passionate about the idea of being able to obtain new employment. I haven't been shy. People that follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter have seen me probably say it 100 times. Like I've been fired and I've had my job, become redundant with COVID. That led to me, scrambling for new jobs. I remember going through Indeed, LinkedIn, trying to apply to these jobs where you see there's 300 applicants to this one role. I remember going through the interviews and it not being great. And I really just wanted to take advantage of this opportunity that I had, to build a platform where it doesn't win on scale. There's not going to be 100 new jobs every single day, but each one is going to be qualified. We all know what it's like to go to LinkedIn or Indeed. We type in SEO into the job search, and the first thing we find is a web developer that has a bullet point that says SEO knowledge is much appreciated. Well, that's not really an appropriate job for SEOs. So when you go to SEOjobs.com, every job is going to be targeted for somebody. Very likely, it's either just going to be limiting to your experience or the location of the job itself. And it's just something that I felt like I could give back to the industry, and the feedback and, the support I've been getting from the industry as a whole has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, and I'll say when I was in a job hunt, I used SEO job board and, got a good 4 or 5 interviews out of it. So yeah, kudos to you to, like you said, like the quality I think is so important there. And you've done a great job curating that board there. Nick, would you say like this is one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you? Like the, a lot of our users are link builders, digital PRs. I'm assuming you get a lot more kind of SEO, like link building kind of focus roles in there. Has the job opportunity, like the job market for link builders changed in the past few years?
So that's a really difficult answer. I'm gonna say yes and no. So really, that's my attempt of saying it depends without using the word it
You
depends.
only get one of those per interview here, so
I know. Okay, I used it. We're 5 minutes in, and I've already used my it depends. But I think the answer again, I can't give you a hard. The thing is I think link building as a whole is really one of the most difficult aspects of the SEO scene as a whole. We know that it's abused, and there's a lot of guest posters and people creating PBNs and trying to shill that stuff via spam. And then there's a new wave of what I'm referring to as like your digital PR. These are people that do link building in a more traditional outreach journalistic style. And this is where the true link building jobs are coming from that I would say are scalable and providing value. So as a whole, I think jobs are going up because there's a lot of opportunity there. The only reason I kind of border on the no is simply because there's so much spam and scams that are going on. I think a lot of people are just hesitant to hire link builders this day. So it obviously kind of allows people that are really good at it to flourish. But if you're not, the fail rate is exceptionally high.
yeah. Remind me, is SEO jobs international or is it just US based?
So right now, SEO jobs is primarily US based, although we do support Canada, UK, and to a very small extent, larger worldwide audience. But most of the users do come from the US, as I would say probably 70% of job listings at this point are US based.
US. The reason I'm asking that is because there seems to be at least a big distinction between the terminology in what I guess US Americans call it like content-led link building versus digital PR for UK is kind of the same thing. So there's a bit of like a terminology mismatch. I'm curious if you at least see the link builders in the UK. Is that kind of the case? Like they use the term digital PR rather than link building?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the digital PR agencies that are scaling and doing it well are UK based. I don't know if it's that when you're US based, they're just not as profitable. We know salaries and benefits are a little bit different overseas versus in the US. But you're right. I do see a lot of link related or digital PR positions that are a little bit more focused in the UK than in the US.
Yeah, I know we're jumping around a little bit here, but from your consulting side, like I said in the intro, like you've worked with a lot of major brands. Do you see that shift into kind of that more, let's say, natural, like digital PR link building approach in these bigger brands as well?
Absolutely. So I think it's definitely a story of the rich get richer. When you're a large brand and you're potentially running ads, whether it be on TV, radio, or just offline in general, and you have, a whole PR team, inherently you're getting mentioned online, you're getting these links. So it becomes a lot less of we need links versus we're already kind of getting them and how are we best leveraging it or pointing them to the right sections of the site, which I would say is a completely different story versus a small or medium sized website where you're simply trying to get links, you know, in totality just to be able to build up your authority and be able to rank the whole.
Yeah. So, and I think this kind of touches on something you told me when we were planning this podcast. So like you yourself don't necessarily do a lot of link building for your clients because they're typically larger clients, like some of the ones you mentioned, but it seems like they're kind of naturally getting links because they're so well known. I mean, is that kind of just the case with any of these bigger brands?
That's exactly what it is. So I spend more time working with in-house or PR partners, but I would say very much in the traditional sense. They're looking for citations and listings and coverage for their brand and just making sure that, they're doing it appropriately. One fun story that I had, and this was actually prior to going out on my own, I was working with a company that had a PR team, and I happened to ask one individual if I could just have 20 minutes of her time to just understand how she goes about doing this. And within 5 minutes, she had shared that, yep, and every time we get a placement, we use a bit.ly link so that we can track how many times they're clicked. And I just kind of I was just like, time out for a moment. I was like, can you explain to me? Because again, I'm going to be PR newbie here, but is that a best practice, or why are we using Bitly versus linking directly to the site? And her response, she goes, oh no, we are just trying to be very intentional, because if we use a regular link, we'll have no clue if people are clicking on it. And then I got to kind of bring up the idea of like Google Analytics and how the link going back to the site versus through a Bitly link provides potentially SEO value and not. But these are the type of conversations where it's like literally by asking for 20 minutes of her time, but she stopped using Bitly, had her team change documentation, and I helped them put in processes to be able to leverage Google Analytics so that they could get the same data. And now all these amazing links that are getting are no longer blocking the SEO value, but
Right.
we are truly, harboring it all. So I would say when you're working at the enterprise level, like that's definitely an extreme situation, but working with the process and the initiatives that they're already doing just kind of unlocks and further enhances the value that you're getting versus, again, as we had talked about, smaller sites that are kind of starting from scratch and trying to just claw for those handful of links that they can get.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say this. I think in just, as I'm talking to a lot of our clients or a lot of our customers, I'm sorry, and like the agencies we work with, like that seems to be the main takeaway for a lot of these brands, that is like it's so important to have some synergy between either the digital PR team or like the SEO consultants, with the more traditional PR teams in house or even agency side. Because, yeah, stuff like that seems to happen all the time. The Bitly link or even like unlinked mentions, like being able to tackle those, and seems to be like there's a little bit of education needed for either team sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, and I think one thing that's nice is PR teams, at least the ones that I've worked with, their KPIs for success are a lot different than what we would look at for SEO. So it's pretty awesome when I can bring to their attention a secondary value that they are providing exclusively. So not only is that, they may look at it as they've gotten coverage on five, sources, and collectively they tend to report on their audience sizes as kind of like an impression. And that's pretty much the extent of their like KPI. So when I can sit there and say, oh, you've built all these links, and again, in totality, our organic search has 2x in the last year. It may not be exclusively because of it, but I'm certainly going to give them their share of credit, because without their links, we certainly would never have been able to achieve that.
Yeah, yeah. I love that approach. Just kind of providing as much value as you can to every aspect of the business that you're working with. Such a nice mindset to go into it when you're working as a freelancer, or any agency, really, I guess.
Yeah, and without going into a tangent real quick, I'll just say I think this is one of the things that SEOs need to do as we all evolve, whether it be like focusing on SGE or links or SEO just as a whole. Is I think a lot of us liked the idea of kind of working within a silo. It's like we SEO'd the website. We work maybe with a content team. On a rare day, we might talk to paid search, but I truly think in a world of this like expertise, authority, trust, as you will, you're not going to be able to do that within a silo. We're going to have to talk to PR teams. We're going to have to talk to project managers and customer service reps, content teams. I mean, literally, if there is anybody who touches the site or provides value to the site, SEOs need to be talking to them, because to win an SEO in 2024 and beyond, it requires a heck of a lot more than throwing the right words on the page and then dumping a bunch of links to it. Still
Yeah.
works, but if we want to make it last, the test of time, we need everybody involved.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it seems to be like, right, that's where this helpful content and AI is pushing everybody to do. And I think is a great segment or segue into what I wanted to ask you, kind of on the other side, like the job search side of things. So, for people that are looking to utilize, say, SEO jobs board, it might be people that are new to link building. How has the skill set changed, I guess, for new link builders? Let's start there.
So I love this question. And I think the answer is very similar for link builders, but I'm going to speak to it just kind of at SEO as whole because I think this is true for everybody. But what I've seen with SGE, AI, everything that is making life a little bit easier, what it's also doing is it's streamlining what I would have previously identified as a junior level resource. Again, for link builders, a lot of being able to go out and, identify who you're going to reach out to, build a template, and then being able to copy and paste, like all that kind of stuff can be automated to a certain extent. It still requires human oversight, but a lot of us, and Vince, I can't speak for you, but like when I first started in SEO, like I did my fair share of redirect mapping and keyword, you know, typing them all up in title tags and descriptions. And it was just a little bit of what I always thought was, you're just learning your ropes, like everyone goes through it. And with AI, we're almost skipping that point. So to answer your question more directly, I feel like whether you're a link builder, entry level SEO, probably even on the paid side too, we are skipping that entry level and going into more of that secondary career, whether it be an analyst, a strategist, and it's requiring more critical thinking and probably more effective communication when it talks to clients or in-house, C-suites that need buy-in.
Yeah, I mean that's a great answer, and it brought up a couple more questions. So, like, if you're new to LinkedIn, it's like, or sorry, to link building and SEO, it seems like you kind of need you're missing out on some of the like grunt work, right? Like, at least for
Absolutely.
me, it was really helpful in kind of educating me on how things worked. So, if people are going to miss out on that, and that is being automated, are there places that or resources that you recommend people go to? I mean, this kind of stuff isn't taught in college, right? Like, or like
Right.
there's not a lot of great traditional education around this stuff, I'd say. So I'm curious what advice you have for people new looking to get into the industry.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of just building like your own side projects, whether it be, something like an SEO jobs or an affiliate website, or just taking on, a small retainer where you're helping a small business. That's how I grew. I had my 9 to 5, I had my clients, I had the technology stacks, but they tend to be pretty isolated to the same type of technology, same type of sites. And when you go out and build your own websites, it gives you more of an opportunity to touch on topics that you might be passionate about, try new technology that you've never used, and it allows you to do some of that grunt work because I would say the automation and these processes are typically built by individuals that have that established knowledge. We've all put that grunt work in, so we know how it works and how it should work. So people coming into the industry that don't really know that, they're building off of a SOP where it's going to say, click this button, take all the results, paste it here, and like deliver it. And they don't always understand the why behind it. So that's where, again, it's like I'm a big fan of just kind of like the tough love of like build something, fail, try again, fail, try again. And before you know it, like you're gonna succeed, or at the very minimum, you're gonna understand why something works the way it does.
Yeah, I mean, let's dig into that a little bit more. I mean, I feel like that's probably some of the harder questions to answer when you're new is like, why didn't this work? You build a great site and it's not ranking. It's like, why isn't this ranking? What am I doing wrong? And people go to forums, you go on your Reddit, you go on whatever Moz. But how do you recommend like people find trustworthy information? Is it like, finding the one expert that they know and trust? Should they be listening only to Google? Like what makes up their kind of toolkit?
I think it's all of the above within kind of the limits of an asterisk. So again, I think you really should identify your own opinions and stress tests, with your own experiences. But I'm a huge fan of Aleta Solis's learningseo.io. I feel like it really just gives you a roadmap to understand what is SEO, what are some components that are tried and true, and just like really survive the test of time. But as you had said, I do love articles. I still am on Twitter or X and LinkedIn. There's just a lot of knowledge share. People are sharing their own feedback. They're writing blog posts, publishing, webinars. It's just, there's so much information that goes out there that is amazing to review. Now, I would say the asterisk to that is you have to take everything at face value.
Hmm.
And, I learned the hard way, Vince, I'm sure you did as well. Somebody told me, do this because it worked for us. And then you implement for your site and it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that the tactic isn't valuable. That just means that there are other considerations that didn't work for your situation. So again, it's really trying to just take in as much information as possible, process it, use critical thinking, which I think is a skill that a lot of SEOs and link builders struggle because we just want what we want to work, and test. Like test, test, test. Just be very intentional. It's like the reason why we're doing this is because we wanted to do that. And then take a step back and over a certain period of time, did we see that happen? I mean, it's just one of those things that, again, this is why, years of experience isn't super important, but the amount of at bats that you get to try various strategies, whether you're a link builder, a content writer, a technical SEO, every single time is a learning opportunity.
Yeah. So you mentioned, this kind of gets back to what you were saying earlier about like the kind of more junior level skills not necessarily being needed these days. I used to tell people if they were interested, like get a job in an agency, get like even intern or something, get a foot in the door. But if those types of roles don't exist, I mean, do you lean one way or the other in terms of like in-house role or a agency role for people that are just getting started?
I am a little bit biased because I had done about 10 years of agency SEO before going out on my own. But I truly think that the best experience for people new to the industry truly is agency for all the reasons I had mentioned before. It's going to give you the best opportunity to experience different types of sites, different technology, different goals. And it really is going to allow you to compare some of these strategies against other clients that you have. Whereas in house, in my opinion, while I have not ever technically had an in-house client, these are the clients that I'm working with and are integrated with their teams today. To me, that is kind of the you've made it type role. When you already have that type of experience, now you can focus on one site or a small portfolio of sites where you don't necessarily need 5, 10, 20 other sites to validate everything that you're learning and trying out for the first time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I like this idea of really kind of, again, I'm going to come back to this like critical thinking and being able to diagnose problems. Now, so you kind of said it's important to follow some people on, Twitter, LinkedIn, keep abreast of kind of changes and what's working there. And, whether or not you're agency or in-house, it seems to be like the unifying thread is just to pay attention to the strategies, right? And make sure that you're always asking why they're working, testing things, and being able to kind of find those threads that maybe pair to different industries. Now, I want to kind of make a segue into your newsletter because I think this is really interesting. To me, I used to kind of keep my own almost Rolodex of like, I guess in Twitter, you can still do it, or X, like you make lists of people that you follow for different
Mhm.
specific reasons, right? Like this is my digital PR list of people who talk about this, the knowledge leaders. So I'm curious for
Mhm.
you, like as now kind of a curator of this information, like where do you go to find this information and kind of quality check it? Let's start there.
Yeah, so that's another really good question. And I think you touched on the one area I forgot to talk about earlier. So, in a world where you're trying to learn and you're consuming as much as you possibly can, I think one of the biggest mistakes that SEOs do, and I am completely guilty of this when I was younger and still even today, is there's so much information that what you end up doing is you become a pro at being able to cite other people's work. You don't have the experience yourself. So that's actually, the reason that I wrote the SEO for lunch is it started as a personal email to a subset of my clients at the agency I was
Mhm.
working at, basically saying, what is being written in the internet that is actually valuable? Because I know there's 812 blog posts. They're all writing about very similar things. And if I'm going to read all of them because I feel like that's what I need to do to be able to stay up to date with the best practices, the least that I could do is like through, some of my knowledge and share with my customers or my clients, here are 3 things that actually matter. Because you know what I will tell you, if you all haven't experienced it yourself, the most embarrassing thing that can happen to an SEO is when you jump into a call with your client and they ask you, "So tell me more about this Google update," or "Did you hear that this went live?" And you go, "What?" Like, I just gave the stupid face, but that's what you look like. Like, and then you lose credibility instantly. So, with all that being said, the SEO for lunch is just what I had said it used to be, one-off emails to a handful of people. Then it turned into, hey, I bet there's a lot of SEOs that don't even want to read a ton of articles. And now, as you know, Vince, it's a handful of articles, very clearly outlined updates from Google, and then I provide, my opinions on it with the idea of somebody that's been in the industry for 15 years, you might actually care what I have to say about it. So answering your question directly though, how do I go about putting it together? Well, unfortunately, I'm still this guy raising my hand. I read a lot of this information that's coming out. I have sources, in on Twitter and X, I make sure that when Google's accounts tweet or whatever the X equivalent is these days, that I get an alert sent to me so that I know when official updates are being pushed. And then what I do is curate lists of individuals that I trust and actively write. Then there's websites like Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, as well as like Barry Schwartz at, SD Roundtable that just are always kind of on the pulse every single day. So I'm going through those. And again, what I do is I make a mental note of things that I personally found interesting, or I can see a situation where it would be valuable for others to be aware of. And a good example of that is Google has done a really good job recently of publishing some really good, like 101 content, things like how Google crawls the internet. For anybody that's been in SEO for any length of time, like this should not be new information. But half the reason that I'm sharing it is because I'm thinking selfishly of like, how does it help me? Selfishly, how does it help you? But I'm also looking for opportunities that I can consistently share these nuggets of information as a way to educate and increase the buy-in for SEO for my clients. Because these are people that are wearing SEO hats in addition to 20 other hats. And if I'm sitting there telling them that they have significant crawling or indexing issues, I have a certain amount of trust because they hired me as I hate this word, the expert. But what better proof than to be like, look, this is a Google document, and they say you need to make sure your site is crawlable. And now I'm showing you proof that your site is not crawlable. I mean, at that point, you've got to take action, right? And so that's why I surface up this type of information in my newsletter.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I'll include a link to Nick's newsletter, but I think you do a great job of curating that. And I too, like I used to when I worked with Siege, I remember just having like a folder, like a bookmark folder of just like whenever I mention this to clients, I will give them this document, right? Like it's so important to have those documents kind of together so you can kind of just easily back up. Even if it's not a Google specific document, it's like case studies or tests that people have run. It just feels like building that, using that to kind of build your knowledge, your own knowledge graph using a Google terminology here. Like,
Exactly. And one other way that helps them is this idea of we don't want to tell our clients like no, or even if you're in-house, you want to tell your leaders no. So if they come up with this great idea that isn't a great idea and you don't want to be the one to tell them that, sometimes it can work really well because Google will also document things that you shouldn't be doing. So if instead of me saying, Vince, your idea is stupid, we shouldn't do it, I could sit there and say, oh, John Mueller recently posted about this where he says you don't need to use RelProv Next anymore, and then show it as like a proof. So it's more of like we are learning collectively versus me telling you your ideas are dumb.
Yeah, that's a great tactic. It kind of just shifts the onus to Google there, and you don't have to feel bad about saying no. I feel like working as
Exactly.
a consultant or like in an agency, you pick up all those tricks over the years. Um,
Absolutely.
so Nick, I wanted to get into a few things that I think you are also like uniquely able to talk about. Both you and I are dads, and you specifically, like, you have SEOjobs.com, you got your newsletter. And I know personally, like, even the newsletter is very time consuming for me because we have our
Yes.
BuzzStream newsletter. Um, and your consultant, obviously, like being a consultant is a full-time gig. So I really want to ask, like, you know, what is it like kind of keeping that work-life balance for you? What are some tips you have for staying sane in this ever-changing world where, you have fires to put out, you have things that are going on, but you got to keep the business running while still keeping your family happy and being able to spend time with them.
I think it's a forever task of learning, similar to SEO. I don't pretend to have it figured out. What I do know for sure is I have certain goals and I have some boundaries that I've established. We talk quite a bit about agency life and what is, the worst kept secret is you tend to work a lot more than 40 hours. You're stressed out all the time and it impacts your personal life. So when I went out on my own, like I set a boundary of like, I'm no longer going to miss dinner. Like I went from a career where I was at home maybe for 2 meals out of the week. And then, when I went consultant, it was as simple as shutting my laptop down and going upstairs and eating dinner. The other thing you just figure out too is, you have a lot more control as a consultant. You're the one that ultimately gets to say yes and no. And when you work for other people, we're kind of trained to not say no. Or if we do say no, it's a frowned upon. So it's really just trying to best understand what puts you, your family in the best situation to thrive. You learn real quick. And I feel like this is something that I've been battling with is if more for more's sake is your goal, like you're ultimately going to fail. So it's really just trying to identify what is the goal of consulting, whether it's strictly SEO consulting, whether it's link building, and it works for 9 to 5 roles as well. It's just like you can pick, is it optimizing to make as much revenue as you can? Is it optimizing so you own your calendar? Is it, just your clients? And again, the reason I ramble a little bit is because these are just things that I've learned to keep in consideration when I'm making all my decisions, because in a previous life, my stress level was a roller coaster. The highs were the highs and the lows were the lows. And now what I do is a barometer of kind of like, how am I doing? It's like this one, like this is a crazy week. Like I want my roller coaster to be the kiddie roller coaster. And when I start deviating and it goes to the super highs and the super lows, that's when I know that I have to reevaluate.
Yeah. And speaking of those highs and lows, I mean, obviously there's like the client side of things when people are asking you to do things, but how much how much of an impact do like Google core updates make? And like I feel like that I was just at Brighton SEO, and like the general sentiment is like, man, like Google sucks right now, and also like AI is scaring people, right? Like they're afraid SGE is going to take SEO out of the game, kind of. How do you manage that as a consultant and still kind of obviously going to be in it, right? Like you can't like mute that and take that portion out of your life. Like that's this kind of stressful reality of things. But like, how do you recommend people kind of put that into perspective and work with it kind of constructively rather than letting it kind of stress you out?
That's a really good question. And I don't think there's a world where you can't be stressed out about it. I feel like it's kind of like public speaking and all this. Like, if you're not stressed a little bit, like it makes me think that you're not thinking about it enough. But I think the reality is like I've been doing SEO for 15 years, and while something like FG and AI, ChatGPT, like that's all new, but so was like JavaScript rendering and canonical tags. Like there's so much that is new and exciting and scary. We've done this before. Now, if I truly believe that SEO was going to die, I probably would be a little bit more fearful. I think the approach that I take is SEO is continuing to evolve. Google is absolutely making it more difficult for us to succeed. But at least with like an SGE, it's almost kind of like a uniform risk to everybody. So if my site is dropping by 50%, it's probably dropping for BuzzStream 50% and, big sites and small sites, right? So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take a little bit more of a glass half full of like, we're going to pivot, we're going to optimize. Traffic should never really be a huge barometer of success. It should always be revenue. So are we kind of getting dumped, for just the amount of traffic that we're losing, or are we, having our revenue impacted? And I think that once we answer those questions, I'm hopeful that where we're losing our traffic is going to be tied a little bit more to, the traffic that doesn't matter as much. And, we can continue to focus on revenue. So again, it's a very glass half full, but I think the alternative is we're terrified. I stop taking clients. I go take a job, and then maybe like I'll get fired because Google won't exist. Nah, like it'll exist somewhere. Like we might be pivoting to TikTok optimization, or I'd like to think that maybe if we go full circle, I could optimize for a billboard again. Like there's going to be opportunities. We just have to be creative, use that critical thinking that I've said again. And we can only control what we can control because I don't know about you, but I don't have any Google execs in my phone that I can call and just be like, please don't publish SGE.
Yeah, I love that. We can only control what
Yeah.
we can control. Building your kind of mantra and having some of those kind of tips for yourself seems to be what a lot of people say, as especially as consultants. But if you're working in house as a brand too, like you have to be an advocate for your job and while still being knowledgeable. So that's like a nice thing to a nice message for stakeholders, right? It's like we're gonna keep doing what we can do until we find otherwise, right? And you also brought up a good point about how is like SGE, for instance, or AI going to impact uh, bottom line, right? Like it might just take away top funnel, right? And that makes us as content creators and SEOs just like focus on the more important pages, right? So that's all such great advice, Nick. I want to ask one more thing. So, as a kind of general overview and like to put a bow on this whole thing, because you have such a nice flow of kind of information between your SEO jobs and the newsletter and then your consultancy. Like, is SEO something you would recommend people get into? If somebody came to you tomorrow and was like, "Hey, Nick, I really want to get into SEO," like, is this a career path that you would recommend people get into?
Yeah, as a whole, I absolutely still recommend SEO. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Even if we're in the world where search market from an organic perspective is shrinking, like there's still just so much meat on the bone that, I would absolutely encourage it. The only thing that I would probably do at this point is I think there's a huge discrepancy of SEOs that are now joining the market that are kind of doing what I'll call the 9 to 5 SOP execution. Like they're not curious, they're not necessarily pushing themselves to learn like we were just talking about. We're starting to get old enough now. We've had, some veterans that are retiring that have put together some really smart processes where we can get warm bodies in to execute. So what I would really do is have this conversation with people to try to understand what is it about SEO that is intriguing you? Because if you're curious and you're passionate and you like competition, like I think you're going to do really, really well, but nobody's going to force you to read an article. Nobody's going to force you to jump on a podcast. Nobody's going to force you to go to like a conference. Like SEO is a career that I don't think really fit 9 to 5 standard. And the people, in my opinion, and I get a lot of crap from people about it, is this idea of like, I think SEOs can very quickly become like 0 to 95. But I think going from 95 to 100 is truly where the best of best SEOs are. And there's just not a lot of people trying to get to that level. Like we are punching in and punching out. And I don't want to be like this old guy that's like, you need to be loyal and you need to work 100 years and put your time in. But at the same time, SEO is not like accounting. You can't just go in, punch out a bunch of best practices and documents and be done, because that's going to be very limiting to your career growth. You have to use critical thinking. You have to build on your effective communication skills. You have to learn the individual tactics, and you have to push yourself to get bigger and better. And for people that aren't interested in that, that's the only time where I would say maybe SEO isn't the career for you, but it has nothing to do with the viability of the career or the job itself.
Yeah. Wow. What a great answer. Um, if people are listening and you are curious, like Nick said, and you want to learn more, um, I highly recommend, Nick's SEO for Lunch newsletter. I really do think it does a great job of curating what's important, but then also, well, like I said, like having and Nick's take is what you call it, Nick. Having Nick's take on it just kind of helps you put things into for me even like kind of put it not into perspective, but like kind of slot it into like, do I need to know this? Should I take action on this? Or is this like something to alert my clients about? So again, like Nick, you do a great job of that. And I think you're a good kind of role model for people who are thinking of getting into it and like kind of pushing their careers, because like the stuff that you're doing, I think is inspirational in the way that like, yeah, you're launching new things, you're trying to better the career paths of others. So I really appreciate all that and all the hard work. I know a lot goes into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Vince. I appreciate the super kind words. I don't pretend to not be spoiled. I realize not everybody loves what they do for a living, but I am a dork, SEO dork, all the way in, all the way out. It's just something that I enjoy and looking forward to, dealing with the punches that, we get. And like I said, just kind of adopting and seeing where things take us in the future.
Yeah, I love it. Let's see where this roller coaster goes in the next few years. It should be really interesting. So Nick, thanks so much for joining. I think I'll wrap up here. Like I said, SEO for Lunch newsletter. I'll put this in the show notes, and then also SEOjobs.com. Check out Nick there. Nick's very active on LinkedIn and X, so you can check him out there as well. Nick, remind everybody what your Twitter handle is.
Yeah, so it's at Nick LeRoy, NickLeroy, and looking forward to connecting.
Yeah, real easy one. Thanks again, Nick. Everybody, like what you hear out there, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe on your podcast channels, and this will be launched on YouTube as well. So like and subscribe there, and leave some comments, questions for Nick, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again.